Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Shah, Bashim Chakudash. Double honor to the apostles of GMS to give us his truth and Holy Spirit. And salutations to all you accomplishing this word throughout the four corners of the earth. This is a lesson going into some prophecy, about World War III. As it is written, the least of the flock is going to draw them out. You have Netanyahu, Israel, preparing to strike Iran. It says Israel preparing to strike Iran fast if Trump nuclear talks break down, which, those talks, they've been having them over the past 2 months or so. And each time they have those talks, Trump, has been, antagonizing them, basically talking about bombing them, putting sanctions on Iran, so they don't trust America. And Iran already said it, that they don't trust America, because Esau is the devil. He's a deceiver. He act like he wants peace, but really, he wants war. Matter of fact, let me start with that real quick. Psalm chapter 50. Is it 50? No, 55. Let me see. Is it 55? This is Psalms 55 and 20, verse 20. It says, "He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant." And that's always what Esau has done throughout his history. He comes to the people of the land. He comes in all peacefully, and then he ends up bringing bloodshed. That's what he did to the tribe of Gad, the so-called Native Americans. That's what he did to all the tribes. He came in peacefully, but then he brought the sword. So it says the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. They act like they want peace. Trump talking about during this campaign that he's going to end all those wars on day one. Inflation is going to go down, but you see now that everything that he's doing is further destroying the country that he promised that he was going to come save, these peace talks that they're having with Iran, and Russia, acting as if they want to solve, the wars. But, meanwhile, they're the ones, orchestrating this whole thing, funding Ukraine to attack Russia, and backing Israel in a strike against Iran. So it says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. So that's why the scriptures say, never trust thine enemy. And this is what the nations are starting to wake up to, the nations of the world, against Esau Edom, the so-called white man, because they realize that he's the devil, the deceiver. He acts like he wants freedom and democracy and liberation, but whole time, he's the one causing terrorism, causing poverty, causing mayhem all throughout the four corners of the earth, right? This is why you have the BRICS alliance, different nations aligning themselves together to come up against America's hegemony, right? It says Iran warns of devastating and decisive response if Israel attacks. It says Iran would view U.S. as participant in any Israeli attack on its nuclear sites. So right there proves prophecy, right? It says new intelligence suggests Israel is preparing for possible strike on Iranian nuclear sites, right? So, prophecy says what? That the least of the flock is going to draw them out. Jeremiah chapter 49. Draw what? Draw out those armies over there in the Middle East region, which is the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse, let's see. Yep, this is Jeremiah 49 and 20. It says, therefore hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah, that he have taken against Edom, and his purposes that he have purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. That's right. So the least of the flock is Amalek. That's the least of all the Edomites, right? The Most High said, what? I have made you small among the heathen, you are greatly despised. So Esau, Edom as a whole, the nation of Edom, they're a small percentage in comparison to the world population. They're only about 67% of the earth's population. And among them, you have this tribe, Amalek, which is the least number of all of them. Yet they own majority of the wealth. They control the American government, the European governments, and even other governments that are not Edomite dictated, but they control the leaders as puppets. You know, they're the ones orchestrating all the wickedness going on throughout the four corners of the earth, you know, causing mayhem over there in the Middle East. Every Middle East war that America got into was because of Benjamin Netanyahu, because of Israel. And now they're trying to do the same with Iran, but it's not going to go as planned, you know, because Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is the ancient Persians, and the Lord is going to put the spirit on them to get rid of those devils, man, right? That's why they be chanting death to Israel. And plus, they got the backing of Russia as well as China doing military drills with them, right? As well as the North Koreans. So Esau, Edom doesn't stand a chance in this Third World War, right? It says, surely ye shall make their habitations desolate with them. It says, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall, and the cry thereof was heard from the Red Sea. Just give me a second real quick. All right, you sleeping? You sleeping? Yes, lock you. So it says, the earth is moved at the noise of their fall, at the cry, the noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. The noise of their fall, the noise of the fall of Esau, Edom, right? Of the destruction of Babylon, as well as the destruction of Israel, right? Because those lands are going to be totally decimated. But the difference is America will never be inhabited again, while Israel gets inhabited by the children of Israel, right? So now let's go to the book of Joel. This is Joel 3:1. It says, for behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. That's right. So the Most High is bringing the nations over there to the Middle East to judgment for what happened to his chosen people, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, the enslavement, the oppression, right? The genocide for centuries, man. Just how the Lord delivered Israel from the Egyptian captivity, and other captivities by raising judges. This time around, the Most High Yahweh Bashim Shah raised up a judge, a true judge, Yahweh Shah, to deliver us from the new Egypt. And this deliverance, the scriptures say, is going to outshine the deliverance of Egypt. It's going to make the name of Yahweh Bashim Shah made known throughout all the earth. So it says, matter of fact, I'm going to jump down to verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. That's right. So this is what we're preparing for, right? We're letting the nations know that war is coming. War between the nations, World War III, as well as a war of the worlds between the heavenly realm and the earthly realm. The Most High sending his son Yahushua, along with the angels, the so-called UFOs, to make war against the space forces of the earth, right? Donald Trump, he got the Space Force. He got the golden dome that he wants to establish, which all they're trying to do is really fight against Yahweh Shah. So then now China is basically warning the U.S. because they're saying that there's basically space arms race, and they're going to have to partake of it, and then other nations. And ultimately, they're all in cahoots to fight against Yahweh Shah because they understand that he's coming back to take them off their thrones, right? So it says, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And that's what's happening. You got smaller nations like North Korea, At one point they was weak, but now they got alliance with Russia. They're helping Russia fight in Ukraine. They sharing technologies. Those smaller nations, they're going to Russia, because the scriptures say, and I'm going to get it too, that Russia is going to be a guard unto these smaller nations. These smaller nations, they're tired of Babylon the Great. And they're going to Russia as, way out. Russia and China, But the Most High still not dealing with Russia because they're still Edomites, The Lord said, I am against thee, Gog and Magog, which is Russia. So it says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. That technology is becoming more and more sharp. You got Iran, the missiles they got is, hypersonic, They got over 5,000 missiles that could flatten Israel. They said they got enough missiles to keep shooting missiles 24/7 for a year straight, So that's the Persians, man, the Carmanians, right? And then you got Russia, which is Gog and Magog. Just this year alone, they're due to produce over 3,000 missiles, And then you got China, which got those factories, right? China, they're automated. They got factories that automate missiles, man. They said I think I believe every 7 minutes or something like that, they could create a missile nonstop, 24/7, creating missiles in China. Creating ships, boats, and jets and all type of things. Well, guess what? The alliance between those nations is gonna supply other nations that's with that alliance. From Russia and China, and Iran. But Russia is gonna be that main supplier of weaponry or technology to those weaponries, right? So it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. That's right. So it's there that the Lord is going to cause his mighty ones to come down over the heathens, which is mighty ones is the angels. So the Middle East region is going to be jam-packed with armies as well as the heavenly armies, the so-called UFOs. Throughout every major war in history, there's always been UFO sightings. So it's not going to be different with this Third World War. So it says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, which is the Middle East, which means the Most High's judgment, Yahweh Shaphat, right? It says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So it's there that Yahweh Shah is coming upon the throne of his judgment, which is that chariot, that so-called UFO, right? It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. That's right. So that's going into what? The people, the armies that's going to be over there in that region. They're the harvest. Yahweh Shah compares them unto grapes that he's going to tread upon. Mainly starting with Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. It says, for their wickedness is great, meaning they're ripe for judgment. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord, Yahweh Shemashah, is near in the valley of decision. Those multitudes is going to be millions and millions and millions of armies between America, NATO, Israel, and those Western powers, versus the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Ezekiel 38 goes into some more of those nations, Ethiopia, Libya, right? This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2. It says, son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor, and prophesy against them, which is Vladimir Putin. Gog and Magog is the land over there called Russia today, which is the Medes, right? And the Medes, back in the ancient times, they had a alliance with the Persians, which to this day is the Elamites, the so-called Iranians, right? And Russia has alliance with Iran, as well as India. India is the ally too. And even Pakistan, that's all Elam in Persia, but mainly Iran. It says, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor, and prophesy against him. So the Most High is against Vladimir Putin. You got nations that look at him as the savior against Western oppression. Well, this man is still an Edomite. He's a devil too. It says, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Shemashah, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. That's right. So the Lord said, I will bring you back and put hooks in your jaws. I will turn thee back. I'm going to bring you back into that old spirit, Soviet spirit that you had before, which Vladimir Putin, he grew up, in the Soviet era, right? And he got presidency in the 90s, but him, being the leader, he was a Spetsnaz and all that. And, he brought Russia back to its former estate. You had, when the Soviet era got destroyed, they lost a lot of their factories, the different projects they were working upon. They stopped doing it. Well, guess what? Ever since the Ukraine war, and even before then, but Ukraine has, quicken their process even more for them to, make more tanks, make more missiles, having more reserves, coming up with new technologies to overwhelm, Western defenses, missile defense systems, because Ukraine is getting supplied with all their weaponry. So, Vladimir Putin already, it's chess. He already knows how their weaponry work. So it's going to be easy, for Russia to take him out. The Mossad set Russia up as the arch nemesis to NATO and the EU, the beast, right? And Russia is not part of the beast, all right? It says, verse 8, it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Persia is Iran. It says Ethiopia, which is over there, Ethiopia, of course, and Eritrea, Eastern Africa. It says in Libya with them. Libya, they still allies with Russia, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee, which is Turkey. And the many people is what? China and all those other BRICS allies that's going to partake in this Third World War. Be thou prepared, and prepare thou for thyself, and prepare for thyself. And this is Russia stockpiling ammunition, moving troops to different areas. They got troops over there. They're moving to the border with, I believe, is Lithuania or something. But NATO is on their borders, and they're moving troops over there too. They're sending fighter jets and troops over there to help Iran. Right? So this is them preparing themselves for this Third World War. It says, all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thy God unto them. So Russia's going to be a protector and hedge to those smaller nations, providing them with weaponry and technology. It says, and after many days thou shalt be visited, and at the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. So Russia's going to be used to come up against Israel, because Russia's allies with Iran. So if Israel attacked Iran, Russia is going to attack Israel. And then America, of course, is going to be involved. And that's going to be the Third World War. It says, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely all of them. Now this is talking about the children of Israel and how the Most High is going to use this war to bring his people back, right? And establish a new covenant. It says, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. So that's going to be the paratroopers. You're going to have fighter jets, missiles, different weaponry, right? Invading different regions. It says, thus saith the Lord, it shall come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And that evil thought will be Vladimir Putin getting that, commandment from the Most High, that coding for him to push the buttons, the nuclear missiles. It says, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, which is America. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, which is America. Now you got Trump talking about the Golden Dome. The Golden Dome is not going to work. The scriptures say in the book of Isaiah that the windows on high are opened. America is open just like the old world was open to the flood. There's not going to be any stopping the rain and flood of the missiles. But that's pretty much it on that. And I can end with Isaiah chapter 13. This is Isaiah chapter 13. And I'm going to start at 4. It says, the noise of a multitude of mountains like as of a great people, which is the missiles, the ICBMs. A tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. So the Most High is the one that's in control of this third world war. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. So Yahweh Shah is coming at the same time as the missiles are getting shot, because he's going to have to save the elect from the four corners of the earth. And the only way that's going to be possible is by the way of the chariots, the so-called UFOs, which will be used to save the children of Israel, the 144,000, starting from America, but also other parts of the earth that's going to get hit with missiles. But the main destruction is going to be here in Babylon the Great. It says, howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. That's right. So it's going to be a day of destruction. The whole landmass of America being destroyed by 200 million warheads, man. It says, therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. They shall be afraid, pangs and sorrows shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. That's right. So that's going to be when the missiles coming down. They're going to be in fear, knowing that they're going to be destroyed. Them, their children, their families, everything they've ever known is going to be destroyed. Their faces are going to be as flames. Like in the movie Judgment Day with Sarah Connor. The people was, in fear, screaming, faces in flames, looking at each other. It says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. So this is coming from the Most High. Cruel wrath and destruction. And the sinners are going to be destroyed out of the world, starting with Babylon the Great, because this is the chief place of sin. Right? I'm going to jump down to verse... It says, verse 13, it says, therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall be removed out of her place, and the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and the day of his fierce anger. That's right. So the Lord is going to shake the heavens and the earth also, with those missiles, the blast that's going to shatter everything. And it shall be as a chased roe and as a sheep that no man taketh up, which is America. It says, they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone into his own land. And it's starting to happen. A lot of people are leaving America, immigrants, as well as Americans, because they're fed up with what Donald Trump is doing, and they see what's coming down the pipe, the insurrections, the wars, the martial law, the chaos, right? The food shortages. So they're leaving. It says, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. So anybody that's, agreeing with the system, this beast system that's coming, taking the RFID chip, they're going to be thrust through by the sword, which is the missiles. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. That's right. So there's going to be invasions of, Russians, North Koreans, Chinese, making alliances with different South American countries, coming here, invading different cities, sending drones, World War III is going to be epic, man. Right? And even the UN troops and American military and the National Guard, they're going to be doing that too. As well as the average individual, but this is really going into Russia and those other nations, but mainly Russia, It says their houses shall be spoiled and their wives ravished. That's right. It's going to be a lot of raping on you women, man. you know, because there's places where women are the proudest, man, because they got the most rights here in Babylon, right? But these men are going to put you in your place. It says, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which the Medes are the Russians. We shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. So money ain't going to mean shit to them. Their bows also should dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity upon the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. That's right. So this war is going to be epic. We're going to have people being drafted from here to go fight Iran, Russia, and China in the Middle East, or over there in East Europe to fight in Ukraine and NATO, you know, against Russia's borders, right? And the Russians, they ain't going to spare, man. They're going to be vicious. Russia ain't really ever lost a war, man. It says in Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the childish excellency shall be as when Yahweh Bashim shall overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. That's right. So by fire, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah, what they were known for this whole LGBT thing that's going on, bestiality, right? All types of witchcraft and wickedness, man, right? It says, it shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. This is how you know it's not speaking about ancient Babylon, but the new Babylon, which is America, Babylon the Great, mystery Babylon. You know, it says, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall their shepherds make their fold there. Yeah, so it's not going to be anybody dwelling in these lands, just like nobody's dwelling in those lands of Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and, you know, those cities, right? The Mossad turned them to waste. You know, America is going to be a wasteland. It's going to be a big crater, a big desert on the face of the earth. It says, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. You know, so only desert creatures are going to dwell in these places. It says, and the wild beasts of the island shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces, and her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. That's right. America don't have long. And this is why the scriptures say in Revelation 12 and 12 that the devil is going to come down with great wrath, because they know that they have but a short time. You know, the so-called white man, he sees all these signs. He's seen that he's losing that grip on the power that he has, and he's going to go out with a bang. So he's going to he's going to set off this new world order, and, you know, eventually World War III, you know, to cut down the population, to, you know, have that great reset. But the Mossad is gonna cut his plans short. You know, send his son to take this devil out of rulership, and then after that, it's gonna be Israel on top forever, man. Ain't gonna be no, you know, multipolar world where all different nations with different powers ruling the earth, Moab and Russia. No, man. Israel got next. So with that, I hope this was edifying. I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahshua Bashim Hakodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS to give us his truth and all his purity, and salutations to all you out pushing this word throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom.